Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jan Lieber, Chairman and CEO of the MTA. I'm here with my colleague Kathy Rinaldi, President of Metro-North Railroad, but more important, also the Interim President of the Long Island Railroad, and Craig Cipriano, who's the Interim President of New York City Transit. Also, we're here with Mets Team President Sandy Alderson. Thank you for joining us, and Monsieur et Madame Met, as they're known, Mr. and Mrs. Met. We're happy to be here to celebrate the return of baseball in Queens. I just rode the train out, and it was as fast and convenient as ever. We love the 7 line, modern signaling, on time, pumping, really pumping a lot more trains through than it used to. It was great to see so many New Yorkers even coming out, not just inbound to Manhattan, but outbound. That's part of our emerging transportation system. The trains are busy. We're seeing a strong ridership week, even after the horrific incident on Tuesday. I took the train Tuesday and went with the governor to see some of the injured folks in Maimonides Hospital, and the trains that night were packed. The numbers reflected that for Tuesday, except in Brooklyn, but we had 3 million riders on Tuesday overall. Important. That's been a milestone we've been achieving for quite some time, and preliminary reports show that ridership actually rose by 2% on Wednesday. So we're starting to see ridership come back even after the incredibly disturbing news that we all saw this week. Last week was our best week of the year with more than 28 million customers. And with so many folks coming back, and this is news, OMNY is really climbing. On April 8th, for the first time, we recorded 1 million taps on OMNY. 1 million in one day. Using mass transit's the best way to enjoy all that New York has to offer, especially baseball. We're here to celebrate the Mets home opener tomorrow. Baseball always brings New Yorkers together, and it's just what we need in a difficult week like the one we have. So let me turn it over to a man who's been part of the Mets story for so many years. In his own way, he is Mr. Met, Mets Team President Sandy Alderson.
Thank you. Baseball season has started out great for the Mets, 5-2. Couple got away, but all in all, a very good week for us. Coming back with an off day and open the season at home tomorrow. We have lots going on. Tomorrow, we're celebrating Jackie Robinson Day. We're unveiling the Tom Seaver statue. We are honoring fallen members of the NYPD. It's going to be a great day. We hope the weather is terrific. What contributes, though, to a great day is public transit. It's important to our fans. It's important to our employees. It's important to all citizens of New York, and that includes me. I ride the Q line, I ride the 4 line, I ride the 7 line. Public transport is what makes New York so vibrant and so mobile in a way that running around in a car and finding a parking space just does not allow. There have been some unfortunate issues that have arisen around the MTA. We know that Mayor Adams, all of those here behind me are working hard to ensure that those kinds of incidents never occur or occur on sort of a minimal basis. But you heard the numbers, 3 million riders on Wednesday, I believe it was. That's an incredible testament to the way New Yorkers generally view the NPA. So thank you all for coming. As I said, the MTA is an important part of New York Mets. We're right here at the station. Lots of people come to the games with mass transit, particularly tomorrow with a full house. It'll be important. So I want to thank the city and all those with me today for the service they provide to all of us on a day in, day out basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much. So it's great here to celebrate the Mets home opener. New York is back. And as the 7 line Army knows, there's no better way to get to the game than taking mass transit. The Mets Willow Point Station is right here in front of Citi Field on Roosevelt Avenue near 126th Street. Fans can always take either the local or express to get here. And as for buses, the Q48 also stops right in front of the stadium, also on 126th Street and Roosevelt Avenue. Customers can use the real-time bus ridership tracking feature on our My MTA app before boarding. And our Access-A-Ride customers as well have a designated stop right here at Citi Field, south of the bullpen gate in the passenger loading zone. But let's not forget our Omni fare capping. Customers who tap into the system more than 12 times in any 1 week period for free, starting with their lucky 13th trip. A great way to save for the season ticket and other super fans who come to the games. And now let me turn it over to Kathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. It's a thrill to be here on this beautiful spring day to celebrate the start of another Mets season. Riding with the MTA is the fastest and most convenient way for Mets fans to get to all their home games. The Long Island Railroad provides direct service to Mets Willets Point, just down there, all season long via the Port Washington branch, which is just a 19-minute ride from Penn. Citi Field is just 17 minutes from Great Neck and 27 minutes from Port Washington. And fans traveling on the Long Island Railroad from other branches can get here by changing at Woodside, which is just 5 minutes away. If you plan on coming to a lot of games, consider using our peak tickets, which give a 15% discount from off-peak fares. They can be used by more than one person, so they're perfect for riding to the game with family and friends. And let me take this moment to put in a new plug for our other discounted fare products. There's the popular new 20-trip peak ticket, which is great for hybrid workers in Manhattan, and the newly expanded City ticket lets city residents travel between Long Island Railroad stations within New York City for just $5 one way at off-peak. We cannot wait to see you on the rails this season, and I will now turn it over to Jenna.
Okay. Where's Minton, who usually MCs us?
On-topic questions to start the proceedings. On topic.
He's wearing the Mets hat.
There's a lady in a Mets jersey, and we got the Mets cap Dave. Sorry. Got a microphone right there.
Hey, how's it going? This actually is for Sandy. You know, we do have really awesome mass transit connections to Citi Field, which is great. I'm curious, are the Mets getting involved in trying to get any better bike connections to Citi Field? Because it's about halfway there, and then it's pretty dangerous once you get closer to City. So what are the Mets going to be doing to kind of encourage another environmentally friendly transportation method to get here?
Yeah, that's a very good question, one that I can't totally answer at the moment. But you know, as you know, Willets Point, Citi Field, difficult to get to walking or by bicycle. We have to do a better job of providing the kind of direction and information that will allow people to use their bikes to get to Citi Field. So it's not something that we're super good at the moment, but we'll continue working at it.
Actually, just so, could you maybe commit to at least putting bike directions or how to bike to Citi Field on the Mets website, where it has all the transportation options?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Give me a couple of days.
Sure.
Okay.
Dave Colon of Street Squad. We got Michael Gold from the New York Times right behind.
Hey guys, congrats on 1 million swipes on Omni. I know that when you guys announced this fare capping pilot, one of the big incentives here was to help encourage people to ride the train by making costs more predictable. And I'm wondering to what extent, now that you are at 33% of subway swipes coming from Omni, you get the sense that riders are coming back because of this, or to what extent it's just crossover from riders you'd already recovered?
Michael, we don't yet have that. But I think that what we're seeing is that Omni users, it's so easy to use Omni that it kind of encourages that incremental trip, and then you get the fare, after 12 you get the free trips. So one of the things that we all know if you're in the transportation business is sort of ease of payment, the simplicity of payment, the fact that it doesn't take a long time and a lot of technical process it encourages people to use it. We think that's what's going on with Omni, but obviously the big numbers are what we're watching. And as horrible as the events of this week are. We are also seeing we're staying at that 3 million number, over 3 million number. That has been an important benchmark for us for a couple weeks, and we think we're starting to get people back. Brooklyn was up 2% even just since Tuesday. So again, we're never going to talk about what happened this week without acknowledging the horror and the sympathy that we all feel for the passengers who were subjected to that, even our passengers who saw it in media. But we believe that New Yorkers are resilient, and we're starting to see people finding their way back to the system.
Jose,
This is going to be a lot of questions about that.
on topic.
On
Okay,
topic.
Jose, hands the mic. Anybody else on topic?
Yeah, that's the off-topic.
Great. We're going to thank our friends from the Mets
Yeah.
and excuse them as we take other
All
stuff.
right. So long, Mrs. Met.
Thank you.
Madame Met. Okay.
All right, folks. On the off chance there's a couple of non-meeting questions about other business, let's go over here to Jose Martinez, a man, this is true, could tell you every single ingredient in the number 12 hero at the legendary Don Pepe Deli. Am I getting this correctly? You could, right? All right.
That is correct. Highly
Probably
recommended.
Not what he's going to ask about, but he could do.
Jano, now we're off topic. In the wake of what happened earlier this week, can you say what type of follow-up meetings you've had in terms of emergency response, both within the MTA and also with the city, whether it be the NYPD or emergency management, and how you think things went that day? Well, actually, we know how they went that day, but how you think they will proceed for future horrors like this. And second, on the cameras, I know it's a favorite topic of yours, have the ones that were not working along the 4th Avenue line, have those been looked at or replaced at this point? And thank you.
Yeah, in answer to your second question, those cameras have been restored. It was the cameras themselves were working. It was the internet connection that apparently had failed. Without getting too technical, there's a node that carries that internet connection for those stations, and that had failed. We've all learned about internet connections in the in the Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams era, and that's exactly what apparently failed. Listen, we had really good collaboration with the emergency service professionals, not just with the NYPD and with the FDNY, where we have like ongoing collaboration both at the Rail Control Center and through other protocols that are established, but also with the State Department of Homeland Security Emergency Services, DISHES, which is headed by a recent transferee from city government to state government named Jackie Bray. She's an important person for us as we're dealing with emergency service processes. I was in touch with the police commissioner and the deputy mayor several times throughout the day. We obviously work closely and we work closely with them on putting together the evidence. You talked about the cameras that were not working, but there are a lot of cameras that were working, and those camera feeds, we had 600 cameras just on the N line in Brooklyn alone, and those cameras were examined, and they did yield the images of this fellow James coming into the system, and apparently some other images of him moving elsewhere in the system after the attack. So we had a ton of interaction with the PD. We have 50 times a day we actually capture video for the NYPD. using our camera system, which is something that we installed. If some of you who've been on this beat for a while remember, we had a couple of, a tough year or two where we were pressing the NYPD to increase their focus in the mass transit system. And there was some tussling because their position was, we're not going to do that at that time, because coming from City Hall, in fairness. Mayor Adams has changed that, but in the meantime, while we were concerned about safety during the de Blasio years, we installed like 5,000 to 7,000 more cameras, spent several $100 million on it. We're doing another couple $100 million on it now. It's a huge piece of our system, but obviously not guaranteed that every single camera is going to be working at every time, which is why you have so many.
Jano, two questions. On the cameras, shouldn't New Yorkers expect that given the size of that expenditure, it's not subject to the whims of no Wi-Fi, the node wasn't working, not just at 36th Street, but we understand it wasn't working at 25th Street where the alleged shooter got off as well. Is there a commitment you would make to some type of quality enforcement so that it's more reliable? And I have a second question.
Andrew, we had when it became known that camera was down, we actually had somebody working on it the day before the attack. So listen, no excuses. We have to have these important security features working. But the important thing that cannot be lost is all our focus collectively ought to be on prevention. It ought to be on prevention. It is, the detection, the investigation. There are a lot of tools. As I said, there are 10,000 cameras. They contributed to finding Mr. James and apprehending him. But we ought to focus, and the media ought to focus on how do we prevent these attacks? How do we prevent them from ever happening? And as the mayor has said, we want cops on platforms, we want cops on trains. We want the bag check, which we've all seen in the system, to be actually used from time to time. All of us have gone through the system for years and years. We see the tables set up. We would like the NYPD folks who are manning those tables to actually check bags, especially when people come in with the kinds of large luggage and containers that we saw in some of these videos. So I credit the mayor for committing to prevention of crime. And that's what the MTA and the city are going to continue to work on. How do we get cops on platforms, cops on trains? We need more of that. I went around the system this morning looking for that. I know there's a shift change in the middle of the morning rush. We'd like to talk about how do we, make sure that there are folks on the platforms in the middle of the rush. And we also want to talk about the ways that you catch bad guys before they get in the system. Stopping fare evasion is not just a scofflaw situation. And it has to be, fare evasion enforcement has to be done equitably. It cannot be done on one group of people or in one neighborhood. But it is one way that we make sure that people do not come into the system with loaded weapons, that they don't come into the system, that people who have bad intent don't get into the system at all. It's proven again and again to do that. And it's a deterrent. If the bad guys know they might get stopped at the fare gate, they're less likely to come into the system. We want to focus on prevention. We know that the mayor, with the support of the governor, is very much on that message and on that focus. And that's where we are going forward. Stop this kind of thing from ever happening again.
Just as a quick second question, you talked on the day of the incident about the heroic actions of either the train operator or the conductor who essentially told passengers to get on that arriving R train. We've subsequently learned that the gunman himself might have gotten onto that R train. Does that change any protocols going forward? Is it something you'll look at because the passengers themselves have told us we didn't know if he was on that train?
I honestly, Andrew, I don't know. I just don't know the facts you're speaking to, so it's not fair for me to respond.
Hi, you mentioned the video you had of Frank James. Why was that not released to all the media? Why did only...
I think it was.
Jano, even with the kind of good news on the subway rebound yesterday, it does seem like things are kind of plateauing, even maybe a little bit below the worst case McKinsey projections for at this point in the year. How concerned are you about that? Or, I mean, what are we going to do? What are you going to do about that if there is kind of a push, the push to get people back to offices is kind of losing steam on the business side? You know, even Chase is saying, well, we're going to do 3 days a week now.
So I don't know whether there's, the trend in terms of return to office. What I do know is we're making incremental progress. You're not wrong, Dave, that we are short of the McKinsey projections, which assumed 2 waves. They didn't assume Omicron and maybe some of the other variables. What we're doing is we're redoing the projections. We had a competitive procurement process. McKinsey has got the work competitively. They're doing a new update of the projections using both epidemiology and and economic projections, modeling, and we're going to have that in time for the July plan. What it means is we will all have to continue to raise with elected officials and decision makers the urgency of coming up with a plan to solve the MTA's financial situation. The MTA only has 3 tools, and none of them are ones that we want to use. Layoffs, firing people, cutting service, or raising fares. So in light of what we learned about how essential the MTA is, especially for essential workers, low-income communities, the people who rode right through the pandemic and are riding today, we must find a way to finance the MTA with recurring revenues so we're secure going forward in light of whatever is the new ridership reality post-pandemic. We'll know more about it come the July financial plan. You're not wrong that we're a little short of where we expect it to be. But remember, those projections were made more than 18 months, close to 2 years ago.
And sorry, did you say that McKinsey got the contract again?
Yeah, they did. We had a competitive procurement, and they were low bidder. And so they'll be doing the work.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I think Mr. Gold he was just hanging back.
Apologies.
I've got 2, but one is from Anna, so maybe we can allow that. But before we get to Anna's camera question, I want to ask you. The mayor's been speaking about possibly adding metal detectors or weapon scanners to the system. You've spoken about the need to balance public safety with the fact that the subway is a public square. I'm curious what you think about some of these ideas and how you kind of strike that balance between a space for the public and one that also has public safety concerns.
Listen, there's no point speculating because. What I like about what the mayor said is the openness to looking at new technology as a way of managing, making the core purpose of the subway, which is it's a public space where everybody feels welcome and safe, to improve that goal, to pursue that goal. So if there are technologies that can make everybody feel safe, make it even more desirable to share in, what is our birthright as New Yorkers, the subway and mass transit, I'm all for it. I just don't know enough about how they would work in the subway. Well, all I've said so far is I'm for every idea being studied that could work. What I'm not for is a, airport type metal detector system where, even if you have TSA pre, you'll never get to, your experience of mass transit will no longer be, it'll just be fundamentally different. We don't have we couldn't do the volume of people who need to use our system. It would be fundamentally unfair to poor people who wouldn't be able to get where they're going and don't have cars and don't have Ubers and don't have options. So that one model, which I think the mayor has said he's not interested in, I would rule out, but anything else I'm interested in studying.
And then separately, I know last month at the committee meeting, Craig, you mentioned kind of a different types of cameras. You've got your deployables, you've got your PIDs. I only vaguely know what those words mean, but I'm wondering if someone can just give us a breakdown of how many of these cameras are local, how many of them are networked, and then to what extent they're pointing at platforms versus fare areas.
So I think that the answer to your question is not one we can just give from the podium, but we'll put it together and we'll provide it to you. Because they're, it's discoverable, but it's a lot of detail and you got to do a lot of math to answer your question.
Thanks.
Okay.